So welcome everyone. Welcome to the Read to Lead, Meet the Author series with the brilliant David JP Phillips. These are always a great opportunity for us to connect leaders and readers with authors, to meet the mind behind the brilliant books that we explore, and also to provide a really dynamic element to our learning. So as I said, David JP Phillips joins us. He's public speaking and communication expert and author of a brilliant new book, best-selling book, High on Life. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Sarah Clayton-Jones. I'm the founder of Read to Lead, and we're all about how we connect people through learning using brilliant books, powerful conversations to ultimately become better leaders in life and business. So we've got our global community, and we also work with a number of corporate clients to really encourage curious minds and collaborative cultures, if you like. I'm going to introduce David. Give me a shot at this, David. So David is a, well, there we go. Do you remember, David, when we met? David said to me, one bit of feedback, Sarah, is you use a lot. So he gave me a bit of advice on how I could less and I'm struggling with it. Maybe we'll come back to that one. We could use me as an example. I'm going to give it a go. Anyway, so David is an international speaker, author and coach on public speaking, communication, and self-leadership. He's best known for his TEDx talks, How to Avoid Death by PowerPoint. Caroline in the audience, I know that is a massive one of yours that you've referenced in so many of your presentations and training. The Magical Science of Storytelling and 110 Steps for Excellent Communication. And they've accumulated over 12 million views, if I remember that rightly. And a lot of it accumulates, like I was talking about earlier, in your High on Life book, which is recently launched, a best-selling book. It's all about how you can change your mental states through your biochemicals and neuroscience, a bit of a mood manual, if you like. It's a brilliant book. I've really enjoyed it. I'm nearly the end of it. And I think it's a great accumulation, David, of your story on how your journey, if you like, and also how we can better communicate externally and internally, right? Because it's as much about what we tell ourselves and our internal narrative as terms of how we come across. So yeah, thank you, David. I hope that's done you justice.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Sarah.
So guys, I'm going to just start with some questions, David, if that's okay. So I guess the first one, the obvious place to start is what triggered you? What inspired you to delve into this world? You've given 20, 30 years of your career to this. There you go. There's an again and an What's inspired you to focus on the world of communication and public speaking?
Well, I know now. I didn't know then. I still don't know why I got into it. It's 26 years now. I'm 47, so that's literally my entire adult life. I know now why, but you know, it's weird, Sarah. I'm an introvert. So maybe learning how to communicate was like, from a skill perspective, was important because it didn't come truly natural to me. And the second thing is I'm driven by guilt. Like my strongest driving force is guilt. I feel guilty. As soon as I watch the news, I feel guilty for the people struggling in other countries, which I have nothing to do with. But I feel it, and it's horrible. And it's just become the driving force of, I think, in this case, giving people the opportunity to learn how to communicate, because it just makes such a difference. I think on social media, I'm closing in on 250 million views now. And all that is just free advice to like kids and adults around the world on how to communicate better. I think that's important, you know, because if you all think about it, all of you listening to this, you're all over the world. Like, what do you do as often as you breathe? Communicate. Either you communicate with others just by walking past them, looking at them or not looking at them. The way you dress or not dress. But a lot of people forget that we also communicate with ourselves constantly. So if we're not communicating with others, we're communicating with ourselves. We're creating narratives of the future, narratives of the past to understand our present. If you suck at that, you'll suck at life. Yeah. And you will fail to connect with other people. And you'll fail to create like real good relationships in life as well.
Yeah.
So communication is just key, and I figured that out now, 26 years later. I don't think I knew it when I started.
Brilliant. Explain a little bit what you were saying there about introvert, how you recognized you were an introvert and how you then tackled it as an introvert.
Well, there's been many definitions of introvert, extrovert, and ambivert, right? But the latest definition of it is that we run out of dopamine. So there's a particular part of the brain which has got nothing to do with the other 4 neural pathways for dopamine. It's a separate neural pathway, which we've found quite recently, and it's connected to how much social stimuli we can take. So say, for instance, that the amount of social stimuli that I can take is this much. And as soon as this is filled, I'm tired of social stimuli. However,
that cocktail glass, what is that?
This is a cocktail glass, yes.
Is that how you rock on a
However,
okay.
a person who's an extrovert may have like a beer jar. That's how big it is, and that's how long it takes them to become socially satisfied. Isn't it? Like it takes forever. They literally go to sleep. They're still not socially satisfied. It just carries on and carries on. Mine is fairly small, so like social situation 2 hours, and I can literally feel my dopamine for that particular activity of social stimuli is filled, and I'm happy to go home.
Brilliant. Okay, you talked a bit about there about communication being the bedrock to everything, like underpinning everything, right? Verbal, non-verbal. How do you balance that? What advice do you have, or when you're presenting and you're standing up? I'm referring a bit to the Death by PowerPoint TEDx. And you're presenting in front of people. How do you balance that kind of content with your visuals, with your kind of how you're projecting yourself, how you're presenting yourself?
Well, to start off, let's answer it this way: that if you have a boss, if you happen to be a boss, or someone asks you to, hey, can you build a 30-minute presentation? And you go, yeah, I'll build a 30-minute PowerPoint. That's the big no-no, right? PowerPoint does not equal a presentation. A presentation does not equal a PowerPoint. It's just fundamentally wrong. A presentation equals variation. As with any life is similar to a presentation. So let's have a look at it like this. You start your presentation with a story. Then you use a flip chart. Then you use a PowerPoint. Then you use a raise of hands. Then you ask a question. Then you do another PowerPoint. Then you launch another story. Now you bring in some props, and then you play around with that. And then you show another PowerPoint. And then you end off with a story. That's a presentation. That's what people want to see. And as a side hobby of the 110 steps, where I studied 5,000 speakers for 7 years to find all the ways that we communicate, that I could find at least, I also had like a side hobby where I looked at the amount of variations that good speakers had. Like, I found it baffling that some speakers, they got really good grades, but they didn't say anything that made sense. You know, the kind of speeches where you go and you come home and you go, oh my God, you got to see that guy. He's so amazing. That woman is just brilliant. And the other person goes, what did they talk about? And you go, I have no idea, but it was great. Like, how is that even possible? And I came to the conclusion that a high level of variation equals high level of quality or perceived quality. So if at the same time you have actually good quality and create a high level of variation, the output is amazing. I found 136 different variations. I kind of created a periodic table of that. So I'd say that would be the balance of it. I don't know, am I able to share the slide of that just to see what that looks like, Sarah? I don't think I am allowed, at least.
You can, yeah, you can.
Yeah, now I can, yeah.
It's so kind of what you're saying is it almost the content's important, but nowhere near as important. The content's always secondary to the person delivering it.
So this is, do you all see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the JP Spice Rack. These are the variations you all should be using in your future presentations, like use a cliffhanger, add a rebus, add a quote, do some props, add a joke, add some planned criticism and praise, and so on. So yeah, to your answer, how do you then balance this content with delivery? Well, you know what? Like our delivery almost comes automatically in our content. If I were to ask, say, Ed Lawson, I see you there. If I were to ask you to describe your what you work with, it's quite likely that it would be like a factual description, like this is what I do, yeah. But if I were to ask Ed, tell me the best story you've experienced of a story that you've had in your line of work, and he would just launch into a story, and his entire face would come awake, his body would come awake, his voice would change. So the content steers our non-verbals and verbals to a certain extent, and I think that's fascinating. Of course, you can practice that as well, but content has more influence over our deliveries than delivery has over content.
Makes sense. And linking that in with what you were saying about the dopamine hit, I guess story is a key part of that. When you look at your spice rack, which of those 110 is it that contribute, that help you with that dopamine? How do you bring those dopamine hits into that presentation?
That is probably the most important question of all questions, Sarah. And I think it's this is not the forum really to answer that one. So we'll probably do that another day.
Okay.
That's dopamine.
What, the cliffhanger?
Yeah, that's dopamine. Yeah, the sensation that you want something but you can't have it, or the sensation that you want something but it's not delivered to you at this very moment. It's almost like you want an ice cream, but it's you have to walk 10 minutes to it. You'll keep repeating the idea of having this ice cream over and over again. That will induce the dopamine flow until you get to the ice cream, you eat the ice cream, and then you get a massive shock of dopamine and more. So it's the anticipation of reward. And I'd say it's the most important thing. Actually, 26 years into this, dopamine is the single most important thing in every single presentation we deliver. Without it, you lose people. Without it, they start yawning. Without it, they'll start looking at their mobile phones.
Yeah.
Dopamine is when you're sitting in a presentation and you're waiting for the next thing. What's the next thing? Is that going to be as good as it's already been? Can I learn even more? How can I apply this in my work? If you can't create that, you're actually asking someone to force them to focus, which is not really human, really.
People will give it. So you have to do that throughout speaking. It's constant dopamine hits, is it, right?
Yeah, you need to launch a massive dose of dopamine in the beginning. The Simon Sinek why. If you get a really good why in the beginning, boom, there's going to be loads of dopamine in the beginning. But then Microsoft had to look at how long is our attention span. What do you all think? You're all sitting here. How long is the average human attention span at the moment? Do it with your fingers, in seconds. Matt has got 3 seconds. We've got 5 seconds from Tim. Steve got 6 as well. 5, 7, 8, 10 there. 12 from Ed Lawson too. And it was kind of a leading question because I said seconds. If I hadn't said seconds, some people can actually, guess further on. But the number is 8. According to Microsoft today, the number is 8, which means that in 8 seconds, if I don't say anything interesting, you'll start looking at your phones or on that email or something else. And sometimes it's really hard for me to compete, and it's hard for you to compete, because imagine if someone's sitting in the audience and they're bidding for a house. That's creating such a dopamine surge. Whatever you're talking about on the stage or in your meeting, in your presentation, can't compete. because the internal dopamine reward of focusing on the house is so big that you can't steal it away from them. But yeah, so if you look at my TED Talks, I am launching, well, the last one was now 4 years ago, but it's there's a dopamine surge or hit every 10 seconds in those.
10 seconds, wow, yeah. Okay, make a note of that, guys. That's your number one takeaway.
Yeah,
Before, I'd like you to give us...
learn how to do that. Maybe I
Yeah,
can just give
sorry, David, go
one
on.
more practical tip, maybe how that can be done.
I was just going to ask you, can you share some examples? Like, can you give us, just walk us through one example?
All right, so I assume, PowerPoint, Google Slides, we all use that quite a lot. So imagine that there's such a simple tip when it comes to PowerPoint, and that is the technique I call sell your slide. So this is not the way to do it. Click, boom. You look at your slide and you go, oh yeah, this slide. We could have skipped this one really, but okay. While we're at it, up here, that's the worst thing you can do. That is anti-dopamine. So instead do this. Instead even before showing the slide, you're actually on the previous slide. You say this. The next slide coming up is my personal favorite. Oh, it summarizes everything so beautifully. It is complex. Some would actually call this PowerPoint hell. I call it PowerPoint poetry. So, are you ready? I'm going to give you 20 seconds just to digest this thing, and then we'll go through it together. Okay? Here we go. Can we have a drum roll there, Matt Phillips? Just, an air one. All right, I think we're ready now. Here, the slide, click, and then the slide comes up. Ha! It's the same sucky slide as last time. But this time people will be going like, oh my God, yeah, this is complex. But I see the core, the raw beauty of it. The data in this is just sublime. You can't do this on every slide because people will, carry you out in a waist jacket or something like a straight jacket or whatever the word is. But this can be done in other ways. Like we've looked at the theory. Oh, I'm so excited for the 3 coming slides. It's going to show us practical examples of this. First one is, boom. Second one is, you just build anticipation. This is called sell your slide. And you can easily do this at every other slide to small or larger extent. Works beautifully. So that's a very simple way of doing this. The second one on PowerPoint, which again can give you an idea, is to animate. If you have 5 bullets and you don't animate them, there's no dopamine. But if there's 5 bullets and they're animated, you can easily say, I'm going to show you my 5 favorite tips, and we're going to take you through them step by step. First one is bum, 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 bum. Second one is bum, 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 bum. Now there's still 3 more steps, and people are like, wonder what the next one will be, wonder what the next one will be. And that little bit of anticipation of possible reward creates that dopamine surge. Doesn't have to be a lot. It keeps pushing them in the right direction. And thirdly, I'd say storytelling is by key or by nature the best way for dopamine, because we want to know the end. When we listen to a joke, we're listening to it because we want to know the punchline. So it's by nature it builds dopamine. So stories and good use of PowerPoint, a couple of examples, but there's so many more like way you can do this. But I think maybe I've given you an idea of how that works.
Yeah, definitely. Very neat. Okay, so you say that with such character and ease, and it's very engaging. I guess there's a lot of people out there. I remember reading that crazy stat about it's like 85% of people fear presenting more than death itself. What advice do you have for people with overcoming those fears and anxieties around presenting and public speaking? Because to get into a place where you can perform and, deliver that impact, how you just did then, even just very casually, because you've had lots of practice and, you've really honed those skills. If you get nervous and anxious, everything closes down, doesn't it? I've been there. You just, you go into a bit of a tunnel, and any of that sort of storytelling and dramatics kind of goes away. So yeah, what's your advice for people that find it utterly fearful?
I think it's obviously a state of mind, which is what this book is about, the high on life. I spent the first 19 years teaching people delivery skills and content until I realized that your mindset beats the heck out of delivery skills and content.
Yeah.
So to give you an example of that is if you truly care about your audience, if you truly value how much their lives will be impacted by your presentation and what you're going to say, you will be a way better presenter. Way better. Just give you like a super simple example. Imagine if you have a skill, you know that if you can give that to people, their lives will become 10-20% better. But only if you do it, right? You enter that stage with such a different perspective, because so many, I think, of you and of people in general, their perspective is, oh, how can I get through all my slides in time? How can I deliver my beginning just as I planned? How can I see to that I nail my script? How can I see that I don't make a fool of myself?
Is
It
the I,
is,
you keep saying I, don't you?
yeah,
And that's what you're talking about, is putting it, making it about somebody else, making it about how you're helping others, taking
yeah.
it away from yourself,
Yes,
right?
exactly. We are, and this in psychology, this is called introspective. And when anyone has an anxiety attack, they are usually introspective. Either going, oh, my heart feels like this, oh, my mouth is drying up. They're valuing their own emotions, and that amplifies their anxiety, and boom, they go into an anxiety attack. A core skill to stop an anxiety attack when you coach people in that is to go extrospective, which literally just means that you stop focusing on your inside and you start going like, how many people in this room has blue eyes? How many of these people have at least 8 buttons on their shirts? I did a video of this on TikTok. I think it had like 10 million views, one of the more popular ones I did. And the kids specifically came back and they said, this is insane. I can actually function in a social situation. I can walk into a social situation. I can focus on what's around me, not inside of me. But we're adults. A lot of adults still focus on the introspective perspective of stuff when they go up on stage.
Yeah.
It's moving that outside of itself. So that's one of the tips. The second one I'll give you on nervousness is this. Whenever you're obviously nervousness activates your what is called your sympathetic nervous system, not your parasympathetic, your sympathetic. So the balance outweighs the sympathetic in this case, yeah? And that's fight and flight, freeze.
Yeah.
What you want to is calm that down. And there's a natural stress response in human beings, and that is to release a neuropeptide called oxytocin. So as soon as you get scared, oxytocin is released to a certain amount to kind of lower that tension in you. The beautiful thing is this, that we know you can increase it like consciously. So you can actually buy a nose spray for it. You can actually you do that with pregnant mothers to kickstart milk production. You do it with pregnant mothers to kickstart the labor process. So you can actually buy a nose spray, which will increase oxytocin and by so lower your stress levels. But it can also be done simply by looking at your kids when they were small. So I usually do that. I look at my 6-year-old daughter. She's 11 now, but she was the cutest she can be at 6. I look at her, she's running over the grass. She's got balloons behind her. I look at that for like a minute and I tear up, and then I go up on stage. So the last thing I do before walking up to 5,000, 10,000 people that I talk to, or 1,000, whatever, the last thing I do, I hold my phone, I look at her, I put it away, I listen to my name, and then I walk up. I have then induced oxytocin. And what that means is I walk out on that stage and I care, and I'm present, and I am aware. And That is self-leadership for me, which is what the last book is about. Choose who you want to be, change your neurosubstances to what you want them to be for the situation that you're going into. I love that.
Powerful. So not clutching the nervous bits of paper and rereading your presentation for the last 5 minutes.
No, absolutely
That'd be the
not.
worst thing you could do.
Definitely, yes. Do not go through your script the last 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Just focus on putting yourself in a great state.
in a great state. Brilliant. So powerful. Thanks, David. I'm just going to ask one more. So there's a lot of, with the rise of digital, a lot of what we're presenting is online. What are the trends? And how do you? There's probably two questions. I'm trying to shoehorn two questions in. Let's just be honest here. I was interested to know the with digital, like, and what advice you might have for people, in particularly in that environment, because obviously we're presenting more in that. And I guess the follow on from that really is what else do you see coming up? You've gone on this journey, you've done this High on Life book. Like, what else are you researching or seeing that you think that this is something that I can foresee in communication and public speaking that leaders need to be aware of? Two questions then.
Digital,
Yeah.
people, seriously, take it seriously. It's here to stay. It's not here to go away. It's going to be used, and therefore take it seriously. And what I mean with that is, I'm pointing my finger in that direction at the moment. If you were to come with me in that direction, you'd go into the big. I'm sitting in a house from 1796 here in Sweden. It's a big manor. It's 25 rooms. We have our offices here for my team. That is our conference room. In our conference room, I have my setting for streaming my keynotes. Right? There's a lot of speakers who have a setting. This setting has 4 cameras, a smoke machine. Yes, you have to have a smoke machine.
I've seen that. Lights. That's just neat. Disco.
You got disco lights. You got like massive speakers. You got 3 different settings. You have like a fortune wheel. You have flip charts. You have whiteboards. I love digital. So I get to do digital keynotes all over the world. I do like 8-hour trainings, and people go like, I had no idea 8 hours passed. These were the 8 best Teams hours I've had in my life, because digital is not a problem. Digital is an opportunity, but the way that we use it makes it a problem. What I mean with that is that people tend to place their cameras in the wrong angle, kind of a nostril examination angle, or they've got it over here, like an earwax angle, or they got it up here where I can see like your face is 2% of the entire camera screen. It's like a balding middle-aged man angle, weird thing. And the lights, your eyes should sparkle. They should be alive when you speak. Your light should make your face not gray and dull and dead. It should be sparkling and filled with life. Stuff you have behind you should spark interest. Like Tanya, she's obviously in Monaco. She's living her life here, and that F1 background is intriguing. So people go like, "Wow, what's that?" The stuff that you have behind you can spark interest, and that's never been the case. When you've gone to customer meetings, you can't bring a background to prime them into a new emotional behavior. I love digital. It's here to stay. Take it seriously.
So just before you answer the next one, can I just jump in there then? So what would you say the basic things you need? Like good lighting, right?
Yeah. Well, when COVID hit, Google was the best company we worked with when doing this. What they did is they got this suitcase and they put a camera and 2 LED lights and an external microphone. And they sent this suitcase out to every top manager at Google. So whenever we had meetings with Google, it was mind-blowing. They had this instruction of what their background should look like, that instruction where to place the 2 lights over there and over here, and had this good camera, they had this good microphone, cost about €1,000, maybe 1,500 euros was what we estimated it to be. But they were just brilliant.
Boom, yeah.
So
They were ready. Yeah. Okay. Where does that, what's your view on where it sits between the more ad hoc kind of I'm on my phone walking type? Steve and I have had this conversation, haven't we, Steve? Like interspersing real life, like authentic versus this is groomed and I'm polished, and where do they sit? How do you balance what you do and how much of that?
Well, you should, like this is my actual bookcase, those are my receipts. It's a bit messy over there. These are my objects. This is my room, but if you make it too sterile, too perfect, well, rarely works in anything in life. There's obviously something weird going on then, and also combine that with the like meetings that you have. Like my first time meeting with a person won't be me walking along high noisy traffic. It's going to be more proper. But when you've had a meeting with 10th meeting with a person, can obviously be way more casual. I want to just answer what's happening in the future as well.
Yeah,
I don't have the answer to that. Nobody has the answer to what the future is going to be about. But I can say this, that on social media, which we can presume is the future because it's like we've got a majority of kids and youth there, and what they're becoming accustomed to will probably be part of the future. All right, so that probably makes sense. Storytelling is what works best, like on social media. When you, it's so fascinating that I can tell a story from which is like 1,000 years old, and I can get 1 million views on that. Because storytelling is just part of our DNA. It's how we see the world. So I think storytelling, or I can see storytelling is becoming increasingly more interesting. People love following the lives of famous people, because it's a story.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay.
Not answering AI because everybody else is answering AI, but obviously that will impact the future.
Yeah. Let's you've done some examples as we've gone through this. I think it'd be great if you could leave us with a story at the end. I think it's good to hear you telling a story and kind of how you do that. I've seen that in some of your workshops, and that's really powerful. So if you wouldn't mind maybe leaving us with a story at the end. Let's just open up the floor, though, to any questions that the guys on the Zoom might have. Okay, we'll go Steve and then Olivia.
Okay, thanks, David. I've got a whole page of notes. I'm speaking in about 2 weeks' time at a business expo. So the question is there is the approach the same or is it different whether you're speaking in front of 30 people or 3,000 people? And a sort of a quick follow-up question to that is how would you open? Would you open with a story or would you open with a question?
Well, if it's 3,000 and it's broadcasted with external cameras showing you on big screens, then the difference isn't that much. I would say that you amplify yourself maybe like 20-30% if it's a big audience, because it's more of a show. The expectation is more of a show. So there'll be this amplification in your movement, your voice, your energy compared to 30. But then it comes down even more to the kind of audience. If you have like 1,000, very drawn back, very, very like low key, you'd probably be impacted by that as well and take yourself down. So I think my summary would be, it's the same thing, Steve. If you're on stage and you're yourself and you care and you are present, that's what you win. That's where you win. Yeah. The second one is, would I open with a story or a question? I would probably open with a story if I got the option between those two. Yeah.
Okay, that's really useful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Olivia?
Thank you, David. Really good tips and hints. So really appreciate that. And my question is around storytelling. I wanted to ask it anyway, and then you've just brought it up at the end. But what would be your 3 top tips about storytelling? I know it sounds probably quite obvious, but I sometimes struggle to structure the story, know how long to make the story. Like, what's, you know, the obvious tips around storytelling?
Okay, so I'd say okay, wow, how do I answer that quickly? Well, everything that you experience is an event, and an event is a story. So all of you have literally got 20,000 stories in your head, just to make that clear. An event is a story. So when you come home from a business trip and someone asks you, you know, how was your business trip? When you respond to that, you respond with a story. That's the definition of a story. You don't pull up a PowerPoint. Yeah. But how do we make that a great story? So there's a structure I love, which has 4 steps. It's called prep, background, development, conclusion. So prep, I'll say that again as I saw a bunch of you grabbing your pens. Prep, background, development, conclusion. So the prep is just 5-10 seconds of you altering the state of mind of the person you're speaking to. So it could literally sound like this. Ha ha, Sarah, I need to just tell you there's something amazing just happened this weekend. Okay, listen to this. Now that's a prep. She now knows that this will be an entertaining or a funny story. But if I were to say, oh, Sarah, you know, that last call we had, who was that, you know? Do you remember when, and I go into that, then she knows she's supposed to show empathy. So like prep, the purpose of that 10 seconds to alter the state of mind of the person that you're speaking to. It'll make it so much easier for them to consume and digest your story. Okay. So if I come home from a business trip, I could literally go, okay, I was in a taxi and it was just the most hilarious trip. All right, so we start. I get out of the airport. You know, that's a prep. After that, you do background. And background is, you just need to get these details. Where are you? Who is in part of the story? So where and who? And what is the problem? Okay, where are you? You're in a taxi outside of an airport. Who's involved in this? You and the taxi driver. And what's the problem? The problem is that the first thing that you smell when you get into the taxi is a slight sense of marijuana. So that's the problem. Now, we now want to know how that evolves. So you got those 3 down? We move into development. And that's when we take off in the taxi and a bunch of odd things happen. Here's the key in development. It needs to have a setback. Okay. So when you launch into the development, something happens in the taxi, there's a big problem, you crash or you almost crash or something like that. But there's got to be 1 or 2 setbacks. And then you end with a conclusion. Okay. Why was this interesting? Or was there a punchline to this? Or what should you learn to avoid? That every time you almost get into a taxi and you almost smell that sense of marijuana, pick a different taxi. Mm-hmm. You know, what's the conclusion of it? Those 4 steps can help you a lot. And then I'll just say this, Olivia, that practice this like in your own life. So as soon as you go on that business trip, you're in this event and you think that this event may be a good thing to tell your family when you get back. Mm-hmm. Practice telling it in your head over and over and over again. Different angles, different perspectives, different emotional reactions, different descriptions of your emotional reactions, back and forth, back and forth. It usually takes me 10 live deliveries of a story until I get it right. Okay. So before you come home to your family, you call up your friend and you deliver it and see how they react. And then you deliver it to your taxi driver to see how they react. And you just do like 10 trial runs. Now when you're home with your family, you do it, boom, it's going to be an absolute success. Okay. So a couple of tips.
Awesome
really
structure.
Yeah, because I hear like people like Simon Sinek, they repeat the same stories a lot, don't they? So do you recommend also having almost a book, like 5 stories that are relevant to your pitch or what you do, and just hone and skill, you know, hone that story?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like all of you should have 100 good stories. Like, considering your age, like 100 to 200 good stories. But you don't know what they are. Some of you could probably write down 20 of them, maybe 30, maybe 40 if you were asked. But the other 160, they just tend to pop up in the right contexts. Right contexts, yeah? So do yourself a favor. And every time they do pop up, suddenly in a context, write it down, write it down, write it down. You don't need to write down the entire story, even if that's fun, but just the title of it, so that you have this index of 100 stories, which you can then pick from whenever you need it, wherever you're going into.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Cheers,
And the
Olivia.
point is practice. You underestimate the importance of practicing them. So you have to get familiar with a few key ones, don't you? Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Okay, we've run out of time. Have you got 5 more minutes, David? Or you got to jump off? We were due to finish up.
Yeah, no, I'm cool.
Let's go to Ed.
Hey, David, thank you very much. Really
Hey,
interesting
Ed.
stuff. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed your TED Talks too. I wanted to come back to the question that you parked about reducing the ers, because it's something I hate myself for doing, and particularly bad when you're recording a video. But well, I don't know if there's a reason that we do that. I haven't looked into it, or I don't know that reason that we go. Is it because we're thinking? Is it because we're nervous?
I know this now.
Oh, the filler sound, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I'd say it's definitely habit. It's definitely habit. The thing is this, that it is natural to use filler sounds when we communicate in a dialogue, because it signals that I have more to say. Right? So it's natural in a dialogue. But as soon as we do a monologue on stage, which is more or less a monologue, even if we do kind of a bunch of interactions, we still use that habit of using the filler sound to signal that I've got something more to say. But in a monologue situation, it's rubbish, because it's in the pauses that anticipation is built up. It's in the pauses that confidence is shown. Yeah, so I think it's a habit from monologues, or from dialogue, sorry.
Okay.
And the trick is, how do we get rid of that?
Yeah.
Usually humans have it easier to replace habits than removing habits. So, I'd say statistically 65-70% of you here usually then have too many filler sounds. For all of you, every time you tend to go you do an inhale instead, where you go and then carry on. If you start replacing your bahas, your sheep sounds, with short, sweet inhales, and you do that in your everyday life, you do it by the coffee machine, you do it when talking to your friends, when you're talking to your family, if you just do that in your everyday life for 4 weeks, 90% of them will be gone when you're on stage as well. It's one of those easy things to get rid of, because you can practice it in your everyday life.
Thank you.
We can be buddies, Ed,
Right.
because I've noticed it. I do it more when I'm nervous, and as soon as you slow down and pause more and are more considered with what you're saying and less nervous, it's less frequent. I've found.
Absolutely,
it breeds more
escalates when we're
confidence, doesn't
nervous.
it? Which then kind of is cyclically knocks them out a bit more. All right, one more question. Last question, Tanya.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, David. Really great talk. So thank you. How important is branding to you in your delivery? Because, sorry about the background noise. Because on one of your TED Talks, you talk about changing your background for standout. So changing everything to black, having everything kind of really prominent in your copy. But my kind of 19 years of experience in marketing tells me not to do that, and that my branding is so important versus what the look and feel of my slides look like. So just kind of to get your perspective on branding versus standout, and how you feel about that. Obviously, your brand is obviously still really strong, and somebody watching your talk knows who you are and what you do and what they're there to listen to. But from a business perspective, you can sometimes be going in a little bit new, a bit fresh, a bit blind. So therefore, branding is really important. So just to kind of get your thoughts around that, please.
It's just a question of priority, really. You know, it's that is what it comes down to. If your sole purpose is to go up on stage and say sell, you should brand the heck out of it. But if your sole purpose is to go up on that stage and give people knowledge, you have no interest of anything else, then your absolute focus should just be on the knowledge and the information, not caring of branding or sales at all. So it's all about the priority that you have when you go up on stage, and there's obviously a balance to that. It's not black or white. So it could be 30% branding, 70% focus on just pure content, or just purity when it comes to content is probably the better way to put it. So it's a balance, I'd say.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks. And I just want to say this as well. If anyone wants to hook up with me or learn more or anything like that, just hook up with me on LinkedIn. I do trainings in this and coaching in this as well. So if anyone needs help or assistance, please reach out. Also, this book, High on Life, it's out in 32 languages. So you can find it in, if you're not native English, but otherwise audiobook and paperback is in English. And I also post a link for like a good webinar I did recently on the 3 most powerful tips on becoming the best 1% speaker. So you can have a look at that. I'll just post that in the chat as well.
That's just what I was going to ask, David, was how people find out as we wrap up. Yeah, how people
Awesome.
get.
Yeah. And Instagram as well. I'm pretty
Instagram,
active there.
yeah, the little videos are great on Instagram. Following you on LinkedIn, your workshops, you do free workshops, your emails kind of give you tips. And obviously your book via Amazon. And your presentation mastery course, and you do one-to-one, right? But you also do.
Yeah, we did the presenter mastery course, which is super powerful, which means that you get to do live Zoom training with me like this, but in the studio several times a month, which means that you will grow considerably as a speaker. So if you do want to grow as a speaker, it's definitely presenter mastery, which you should have a look at. And if you look at that that video that I just posted, that will lead to an option to book a call with one of my staff members. Optionally, just reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. But I just love this subject, Sarah, and I'm just saying this to all of you is don't take it for granted. You use communication almost as often as you breathe. And the beautiful thing with this is that you can practice it in your everyday life, which means it's one of those skills that you can be considerably better at in just 6 months, because you're given the opportunity to practice it over and over again, instead of just taking it for granted and doing what we've always done before.
But that's so true. But I love the fact that in your courses, you actually give that feedback. It's very hard to get that honest, critical, helpful feedback, isn't it, on how you present from people. I know you love it, and thank you so much for your time, David. That was so awesome, really, really interesting. Lots to think about. I hope everyone's enjoyed it on the call. Before you go, please, as always, with our Read to Lead mantra, capture your one key learning or action you're going to take from this. Put it in the chat because it's good to share it, and we can capture that or feed into our discussion session next week. Maybe think about we talked to Daniel Priestley recently, and a lot of people came out with there we go. A lot of people came out with an idea of increasing their public speaking, doing more speaking. So this links on from that. That's a great way of continuing that learning and that thread and that action, is how you might start to develop those skills. What could you do? What could you take away as an actionable learning from this session? So please capture that. Let's have a look. Telling story. Yeah, I know there was the dopamine hit through storytelling and how you show your slides, the mindset piece and how you make that more about other people than yourself, the storytelling structure, practice. Yeah. Lots of thoughts there. So 4 steps on storytelling, mindset piece.
Just a beautiful group of
stories. I think everyone's good. So go on then. Go on then. David, tell us a story, Jackanory. Leave us with a story. Can you do that? Can you tell us a story before you jump off, and then That'd be awesome.
About 8 years ago, I was taking a walk outside of this manor here, and I experienced one of the most moving experiences in my entire life, very unexpectedly. I was walking over the bridge. It was autumn, November, and I was hit by a sensation I've never felt before. Like, imagine that you're hit by a sensation that you've never felt before, which is quite rare when you're 39. And I look at my wife and I ask her, what's going on? What is this? And she asks me a couple of follow-up questions, and I'm trying to figure it out. And you know what she does? She looks at me, she tilts her head to the right or left. She always does that. And she says, "That sounds like happiness, David." And I'm like, what? And I realized that I've never felt that in my adult life before. And it quickly dawns, or after a bit of digging, dawns on me that I've been depressed my entire adult life. This is 8 years ago. With the help of my knowledge in the neuroscience and biochemical perspective, I applied that to myself. I hacked my happiness and removed my depression. It took me about 18 months. It was the best thing that I've ever done in my entire life. Nothing will ever come close to it. My eyes are tearing up as I talk about it, because it's just fundamentally different. This led me to understand that mindset rocks. Mindset is way more important than content. Mindset is way more important than delivery. If you walk up on that stage and with your mindset you choose to be aware and care, people will love you for that. And saying that, I also just want to say this: don't take your happiness for granted. You may believe that you're at one level today and this will be the level that you're at for the rest of your life. But I've been depression free for 7 years, and every single year has just become better than the last one, because we can practice happiness, which is just beautiful. Usually happens here and now. God. Yeah,
Wow.
this led to the book High on Life, and that's
It's the story
I
at the
think one
beginning of the book, isn't
strong
it?
stories.
Get the book, guys. It starts off the story at the
Thank
beginning of the book.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for inviting me, Sarah. I'm heading
Oh,
off to
thank you so much
Lorraine's
for
show
having
next
us.
week, so maybe we can meet up.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you so much, David. Really, really impactful. Lots of learnings. I really appreciate your time. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sharing. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Have a great
Lovely.
rest of the afternoon.